welcome to the Humpday Hangout, and we're coming to you today live from the Illinois Fire Services Institute. We're being brought to you today by our great friends at UL Laboratories, where the Fire Safety Institute is bringing you this live feed. Steve Kerber is going to be hosting us today. This is the Science to the Streets Humpday Hangout. Our host, Steve Kerber, is live where he's been for the last week conducting some of the most important experiments, I think, to date for the American Fire Service, in conjunction with the Illinois Fire Services Institute, Skidmore College, NIOSH, our great friends at UL who are bringing you this webcast today, Stephen and Dr. Gavin Horn and Dr. Denise Smith and Kenny Fent, and a host of other tremendous people. Royal Mortensen have put together this incredible series of studies where they've been looking at the cardiovascular and carcinogenic elements the modern fireground, not just the real fireground, which Stephen and Gavin and Denise et al. Looked at last summer, but this summer, as part of Stephen's continuing studies, a 3-year project that Stephen is spearheading, where he's looking at live fire training, fidelity, fuel packages, everything, literally everything. A very comprehensive 3-year study that I'll let Steve expand upon a little bit. Steve's live on the ground from these studies right now. I was with Steve Monday, and we streamed a great panel. If you haven't had a chance to look at it, our good friends at Globe sponsored a wonderful panel, some live stream. It's all up on fireengineering.com. Please take a look at it. But Steve, thank you today for helping us do this tour. Steve's going to give us a tour and show us around the study site and give us the 411 on what he's looking at this week. And as always, I'm always amazed by what Stephen does. He's people call me the Energizer Buddy. He makes me look like a piker. So Steve, fill us in. Where are we at today? What are we doing?
Well, thanks, Chief. We're gonna try something we've never done before. Certainly, pretty much. I've got an iPad and a wireless hotspot Velcroed to it, and we are gonna do about the most real behind-the-scenes tour we can possibly do. Because in about 25 minutes or so, we're gonna light a fire and we're gonna run through a training exercise. So I'm gonna do everything I can to give everybody a little bit of a behind-the-scenes tour of what we got going on here. So actually in the brains of the operation right here, see if I can flip this around here and give you a tour of our trailer. So we just put this in service. There's Robin making everything happen here. So we got our 30-foot trailer. I'll walk outside here, give everybody a look at what Keith Stakes designed for us. Looking out here, we got our 30-foot FSRI trailer. And,
now this is its inaugural run, right, Steve? This is the first time it's been deployed.
This is it, yeah. We built this around Christmas time last year, and this is the first time we've had a chance to put it into operation. But pretty much everything we've learned over the last 15, 20 years of field testing has gone into this. So every little thing is just like speccing a piece of apparatus. Every shelf, every tool bin, everything has been planned out to be optimized for field testing. It allows us to pretty much have our equipment ready to go, get in the field, have everything we need. As we get ready to go, we actually have Roy, Keith, and Robin working on a new device we have, a heat flux helmet. So as we look over their shoulders here, they've developed a portable system that goes onto a helmet that's able to measure 2 heat flux measurements and a temperature measurement, as well as a GoPro, and we're able to follow one of the instructors through the incident as well as the attack firefighter and measure exactly what's going on at their head.
Okay, Dr. Kerber, I'm going to back you up a little bit. Stay with the helmet for a second. Let's talk real quickly. Explain to everyone why measuring heat flux, what heat flux is, why it's important, and how it impacts not only live fire training but actual fires.
Well, there's 2 measurements that are really important to the firefighter as far as thermal insult goes. You've got your temperature, which we're all used to. That's something we make decisions of what we wear daily. And then you've got your heat flux. How much energy is hitting you? These are total heat flux gauges. So it's getting your convective, your radiative energy that's insulting the firefighter's helmet. From this, there's a bunch of tests that have been done to tell us essentially what levels can be hitting the helmet till you start seeing face piece degradation, Many people have seen their borks melted and things like that. We're able to understand what condition those firefighters are in as they go through their operation. We're seeing differences between what the instructors are exposed to, as well as what the students are exposed to that are going through the evolution that you're going to see here shortly. Here we have our video feeds, all our video feeds coming in. So we got the capability to have 16 video feeds. So you're seeing everything inside, outside, visual views, thermal imaging views, all comes in and gets recorded. We've got our data logger down here. We're able to have 300 channels come into that. That all gets monitored right here on this screen by Robin. So he's watching to make sure that during the evolution that we aren't exceeding temperatures, that water's getting on the fire and everything's progressing as it should. As you look out the window here, you see the prop that the experiment we're going to see today is in. It's a 3 metal C-tainers put together. We've done concrete berm buildings, which when Bobby was here, and I'll walk outside. When Bobby was here a couple days ago, we were working in the concrete building. So we've got a whole bunch of measurements, 6 experiments in the concrete building. And now we're doing 6 experiments in the container prop. So in the concrete berm building, we did pallets and straw. In the metal building, we're going to do pallet, straw, as well as OSB. So that's what we're going to see today. We've got a simulation, a training experiment that will have a engine and truck company respond. We'll have the battalion chief take command. That battalion chief will direct the operation. We're looking for about 10 to 12 minutes worth of work from those firefighters, all while all their cardiovascular and all of their exposure measurements are being taken. So this is kind of behind the scenes of the environmental measurements. I'm going to go ahead and grab my clipboard because we got to go run this experiment. And Keith's going to help me out, and we're going to give you a look. I'll go walk through the prop so you can get an idea of what the students are going to experience. So there will be 2 rooms on fire. We'll get a look in the window over here. You can see a bunch of NIOSH staff that's making a whole bunch of measurements as to what is in the smoke. Here you see one of the fire sets with pallets and OSB. Walking down the delta side of the structure here. Out front, you see our cameras that are all over the place. You're also going to see the engine, which starts out static for this. And the 200-foot 1 3/4 pre-connect will be pulled off of the engine. And they will make their way into the side door here of the prop. After the truck company forces entry using the forcible entry prop, and the line gets charged and the line gets bled out, the 4 firefighters will make their way into the prop. And what we're looking for them is put out 2 rooms of fire down the hallway here. So as we move down the hall, they're going to stretch in here. You got your first fire set here on the right with some OSB on the ceiling. Then they need to make their way into the second fire room and extinguish that second fire room there. There's 2 victims, which are rescue Randys. There's one right there. As they come in, and the truck company's looking for the second one, which will be in this room right here. So all in all, we're trying to create a work environment that is typical of a training environment. 5 instructors will take care of igniting the fire. They are all instrumented as well. They're also having all their biologicals taken. So they're having their blood, their urine, their core temperature, their heart rate. All of this is being measured real time. Here's our ignition team. Our 2 firefighters right here are going to get the smoke barrels going, and then they will get the 2 rooms on fire. And we'll have one of our heat flux helmets on them. This is all part of the experiment right now. They're being monitored as they come out from the main building over there. And very shortly, we are going to begin the operation and deploy. So 3 cetainers put together. This is a normal prop that is at the University of Illinois Fire Service Institute. I think you're muted, Bobby. I'm not hearing you.
Gavin from Robin.
Bobby, are you muted? I see you talking, but I can't hear you.
Go ahead, Rob. Are you guys done with your safety brief? Yes, safety brief is complete. We're looking at ignition in maybe around 10 minutes of the smoke barrels.
There we go, Steve. Are we back?
You're back. Now I hear you.
Thank you, buddy. Sorry about that.
No worries.
God bless technology. Well, Steve, real quickly before we get you too involved, I know you've got to get paying attention to the timing and all. The 3 props that you chose, real briefly, why did you choose the 3 that you chose? In other words, the burn building, the containers, and the kind of the modified acquired structure.
Sure. So we were looking at 3 different fuel packages. We've got one which is theatrical smoke, which is also a container prop that was built to be close to these 2 props, so the layout of all 3 of them is very similar. And then we had the second prop to step up the fuel load one more level to be very common, straw and pallets. And then to do something that's also commonly done today, take it one more level and add OSB into the prop. So it's looking at different wall lining materials, concrete and metal, and then adding in the component of the fuel load varying as well. And really the purpose of this study isn't as much varying the environment as it is varying the exercise such that the students get 3 different exposures, and we're looking at their heart rates, their blood pressures, all of that for the cardiovascular risks that Denise Smith and her team is measuring, and Gavin Horn and and Kenny Fenton NIOSH with their exposure measurements. We wanted 3 different exposures, potentially 3 different levels of stress, and we'll put all that together with different groups of students, which each group of students will get 1 shot at each prop, and also 5 instructors. So we're exposing 5 instructors at various levels as well.
It was pretty interesting Monday when we were out there to look at the cardiovascular effects that Denise was capturing with those shirts that Globe provided. It was very interesting to see, the varying degrees of heart rates and body temperature that we saw from the various firefighters, and it really is fascinating to see, regardless of how in shape somebody was or physically capable they were, the wide degree of heart rate and everything that just occurs. And I think it's going to be interesting technology going forward. The great variable, as you're seeing, is the chemical reactions and how do we minimize those. I mean, we can guard for cardiac rates, we can pull people out, but measuring exposures is a radically different problem.
Yeah, well, with training, we have control over that, right? So we're picking what fuels that we want in there, and we want to make sure that we're understanding what's in those fuels as they burn and what the exposure is, so that we're making that decision intelligently. It's not we're going to completely eliminate the exposure if you can continue to put firefighters in these environments, but what can we do to make sure that we control it? What type of cleaning can we do? We've got Kenny here. Come on over here, Kenny. As we're talking about exposure, we've got Kenny here from NIOSH who's leading the exposure, and we got Bobby Halton on the other line here. Hey, Chief.
Hi, Kenny.
He's asking a little bit about the exposure, that as we vary the fuel loads and things like that, what are we looking at from an exposure standpoint? What are you seeing?
Well,
what are you measuring?
With OSB, we're concerned about the aldehydes in particular. We're looking at the cyanides, hydrogen cyanide. And then with some of the new OSB boards, they might have polyurethanes, and one of the combustion byproducts of that is isocyanates, which is a respiratory sensitizer. We're sampling for that as well.
So when you say a respiratory sensitizer, Kenny, what's the physiological, breaking it down to regular street talk, if you don't mind for a second, what's the danger to firefighters when you talk about a respiratory synthesizer?
So what's the street talk when you're talking respiratory synthesizer?
Okay. Respiratory sensitizer, basically once you've been exposed to that substance, and if you become sensitized, then it only takes a little bit more exposure to have an allergic reaction. With cyanides, we're particularly concerned about occupational asthma. So it can be pretty serious.
So when you talk about occupational asthma, people can develop like emphysema type symptoms and shortness of breath, or what we just call the ground zero cough and things of that nature.
Yeah, the shortness of the breath, your typical asthma-like symptoms. Typically, you would have the asthma-like symptoms after you're exposed again to that substance. And of course, with OSB, it's in pretty much any fire, residential.
Smoke barrel ignition in 5 minutes.
Any residential fire that you have is going to have that.
I know I know you were also measuring the volatile organic compounds in and about the fire ground.
Okay,
How far out from the test burns are you measuring?
I'm good.
Hold on, I gotta turn my radio down here, Bobby.
That's okay, Steve.
Washed out.
That's all right. We're live television. So inside the fire is one thing. Really quickly, Steve, ask Kenny to talk a bit about what he's measuring outside the burn container, where we normally would be staging the next group of students, other instructors, even our rehab areas, because I know he was looking at the volatile organic compounds that were well outside the burn containers.
Right. Well, we're doing sampling this time, not just inside the structure, but also downwind of the structure, thinking about what are the potential exposures to the fireground personnel who aren't directly involved in the attack, but they're still at the scene. So yeah, we're measuring for some of those volatile organic compounds like benzene and particulate. Particulate just in general is a concern for your respiratory health and also cardiovascular health. So we're looking at all of those.
Well, and one of the other people that you had with you the other day, Major Bent, was a nanoparticulate specialist. Why would there be concern about nanoparticulates?
He's hung up looking at running the experiment. He's got to get his measurements ready.
All right. Well, stay out of your way, Steve. Keep going on the tour, Dr. Kerber.
Absolutely. We'll stay with you as long as we can. As you look, I'll flip the screen here.
And by the way, Steve will be presenting with Major Fent and John Cirillo and many others at FDIC 2017 in the big room. So you'll be getting updates from this experiment and others that Steve is conducting. Steve's got some very serious experiments coming up in August that are going to have wide-reaching implications. So the studies continue. This is the beginning of the beginning. That looks like the Gavin Horn there, if I'm not mistaken.
That is the Gavin Horn. He's given out some instructions to his ignition team to make sure they get the smoke barrels in place, and we're going to go ignite them shortly. I'm going to go pass the camera off to Keith. You can see Josh there, who captures all of our action shots. We're going to make our way to the front here, where Roy and Jack are working on one of the cameras to make sure they get that up and running. All right, I'm gonna pass this to Keith. Keith's gonna continue your tour around while I take my clipboard and get things rolling here.
How you doing, Keith?
How are you doing, Keith? Good to hear from you.
You as well, sir. We're about a couple minutes away here.
Outstanding. It looks like everyone's getting ready. Keith, what's the ambient temperature like out there today?
Today it's not too bad. We're sitting probably in the high 70s with a little bit of breeze.
Boy, Monday was brutal, fellas.
Much better than when you folks were out here.
My goodness. My goodness. You did that to me intentionally. Keith, now, how many, I know we ran 3 separate burns per day, and we did this over 7 days. So was it 6 actual days of burning, if I'm correct?
Yeah, so I believe we have a total of 18 burns. So it's going to be 3 in each structure 2 times.
And I think it's really important. I think that the folks that are listening to us, Keith, one of the things that we're doing is what Keith and Stephen and everybody else is trying to look at is not just the carcinogenic and cardiovascular aspects, but some of the other things that they're looking at is the fidelity of the fires. In other words, if we're going to be talking about 1403 and other live fire training for the American Fire Service and the Canadian Fire Service, we just had folks from Amsterdam and everywhere else, Denmark and Holland were out there with us as well. You know, what are we trying to teach, and are we teaching people, you know, is what we're doing in these facilities with these props close enough to actual fire behavior to actually be of value? And one of the things that Robin pointed out the other day, Keith, and I know you were in the room at the time we were speaking with Robin, is that we noticed that the flow paths and that the fire behavior was fairly consistent from the regular, if you would, everyday household furnishings to the strong pallets.
Absolutely, Chief. So there's certainly things that are going to be different depending on the type of fuel that you're going to be using. But we're trying to do what we can to mimic the real environment as best as possible. So part of this study in combination with our training fire study as well is going to be seeing how can we make the conditions the most realistic with minimizing the exposure.
Fascinating. You know, you wonder when we look at, you know, the props and that we're currently using, you know, what we're learning, how we might be able to build better props into the future, and not only that, how we might be able to. We were very fortunate to have Mark Mordecai from Globe Manufacturing with us last week, and you know, even just the construction and the design of the gear that we put our instructors in could be affected by this. It was fascinating to see that technology. That WASP technology in use also, as commenting to Steve about how impressive that was. But it looks like the container is just about ready, and I guess we could walk through what Steve's going to walk us through what the crews are going to do.
Sure, we're just about ready to go. NIOSH is actually putting in another cascade impactor because they saw something very interesting with particle sizes in the difference between what's being marketed as the formaldehyde-free OSB versus what we're calling the regular OSB. So they're installing that one last measurement because they saw something that was worth looking at. We're going to start the experiment by igniting the smoke barrels. Those smoke barrels are going to go for 6 minutes, try and limit visibility in there. At 6 minutes, we'll ignite the fire in the rear room. We'll let that go for a minute. At 7 minutes, we'll ignite the front fire set. Once we get flames across the ceiling, we're going to go ahead and close up some of the vents, try and get it ventilation limited, drop the smoke to the floor to limit visibility. Then we're going to go ahead and dispatch the engine and the truck crew. The engine will respond with 4. That's 2 instructors and 2 students. The truck will respond with 3. That's 2 students and 1 instructor. They'll force their entry. They'll flake their hose line out. They'll make entry into the prop. And again, their choice of tactics is up to them. They've got to get in there, put both fires out, report their benchmarks back out to command, and then rescue the 2 occupants. Once that's done, we'll have them do a little bit of overhaul. Again, we want them exposed for 10 to 12 minutes to keep that somewhat consistent. And then they'll make their way, they'll get back onto the apparatus, they'll go back to essentially the medical facility where they'll have wipes, temperatures, all of that recorded. We can talk to Denise about that after the experiment. We'll check in with her team and look at what they're doing, and we'll see that side of it as well. But once we get that last instrument put in, we're ready for ignition.
Outstanding. Thank you, Stephen. And a lot of this, what you're seeing, the way these experiments were set up, Stephen and Gavin and all the crews that were out there, crews from South Dakota, crews from Boston, crews from New York City. We'll find out from Keith. Do you know where the crews are from today that we're working with?
Hanover Park and Streamwood.
Hanover Park.
Illinois departments.
Illinois departments. So there were literally departments from all over the country that participated in this. And what the drills are basically replicating what we would do in, say, a quarterly drill or a biannual drill, where crews are running through their live fire training. So that's why you're seeing the drill has been run the same way on all 3 of these props, whether it was the theatrical smoke and the theatrical props, whether it was the burn building, and now with the containers. So what Stephen and Gavin and Denise and Kenny and their teams are collecting is replicable data by recreating that same scenario as close as possible each time, so that way it's apples to apples. And you can send us questions from home while Stephen's conducting the burn. If you have questions for Steve, we've got about a half hour left, 35 minutes left on our clock here. But if you want a question for Steve or Gavin, it's hashtag FETalk, and I am monitoring that from my cell phone. So if you have a question, send it to us at hashtag FETalk. And again, today we're being brought to you by our good friends at UL Labs, our friends at Globe, Fire Engineering, FDIC, and our great friends at the University of Illinois Fire Services Institute. So this is a great effort. Keith, how's it? That's the burn barrel to the back that Stephen was talking about?
So this is one of the two smoke barrels that's going to be inside the building. So they get these ignited prior to the actual ignition of the fire rooms in order to get some smoke production and try and fill up the prop. So this is going to be aiding in our reduction of visibility during the test.
Outstanding.
So we've got one of our ignition firefighters here. He's got the heat flux helmet on. So that's how we're wirelessly recording our data back to the trailer.
And that was designed by one of you at UL Labs, correct?
Yes, sir.
And there's a great deal of technology that went into that Steve described in one of our earlier broadcasts this week, but that in of itself is a fascinating study in how technology is developed for the fireground by firefighters, by these researchers, and probably in 10 years will be just a common day tool that everyone will be aware of, and will be probably readily available commercially. But right now, we're actually looking at the very first prototype of that heat flux measurement tool that's been utilized all week here.
It gives us a good indication of what's actually going on for the firefighter themselves, because we know that's going to be different than what the actual gas temperatures are going to be inside the building. So we're getting ready for smoke barrel ignition.
There we go. We see the light and the flare. Again, hashtag FETalk if you got a question for Stephen or Keith or myself or Dr. Smith or Dr. Fent, who will be hopefully available after the burn. There you see him lighting. This is just what we'd be doing in the real in the real world. This is how we would be setting up our quarterly drills. So there you see the burn starting. And it's interesting. One of the things that we've been looking at, and Keith can talk a little bit about it, is we never really talked about our Our instructors get exposed to this stuff at much higher levels than our students, because they're the guys and gals that are conducting these burns over 4 or 5 days. So it's fascinating to see what the exposure levels are going to be on these people.
All right, I caught the tail end of what you were saying there, Bobby. I was getting headphones hooked in here. I believe you were talking about the exposure difference between the instructors and the participants, correct?
That's correct. Pretty well. I think it's going to be a fascinating, when the data is in, it's going to be fascinating to understand and learn more about, and maybe into the future someday we'll actually construct limits or develop protection procedures for instructors.
So we're definitely seeing a very noticeable difference between the instructors and the participants. The participants respond in as if it were an incident, get off the unit, they carry out their actions, then they exit the building and head over towards the NIOSH building to get their biological studies done. Whereas the instructors themselves are out here working probably for a half an hour, 45 minutes prior to the actual dispatch. And then they also engage in part of the cleanup as instructors normally would for your training scenarios. So not only is their length of exposure a lot longer, they are also in the fire rooms to make sure that those are stoked and that the fires are set the way they want them when the participants arrive. So we're definitely seeing a lot higher values, at least as far as temperature and heat flux, when looking specifically at our helmet for the instructor compared to the attack firefighter that's responding in.
Outstanding. Outstanding. Great smoke condition that's building now, very realistic. I know we let this go for about 6 minutes. That's correct, Keith?
Yes.
So we're probably about 2 minutes into it. We have about another 4 minutes to go. Then the dispatch will be sounded, The crew will take a lap or two to be consistent, and then they'll do the forcible entry prop and advance the line. So what you're seeing here is, as we would do in a quarterly drill, smoking up the building, getting that condition ripe so that the crews can do their forcible entry and then their search and extinguishment procedures. So that's what you're looking at right now. This is live from the Illinois Fire Services Institute, being brought to you today by our good friends at Underwriters Laboratory and our good friends at the Illinois Fire Services Institute, Skidmore College, Fire Engineering, and FDIC, and our good friends at Globe. So thank you, everybody, for letting folks participate in this way. This is amazing stuff.
One thing you'll notice, Chief, is we leave the structure opened up prior to dispatch and prior to the arrival of the participants in order to ensure we have good fire growth and ensure we have all the fuels ignited by the time the participants arrive. And then we go ahead and close it down, let the smoke layer bank down to the floor, and get our most realistic conditions.
It's looking very good. You know, one of the things we talked about with Royal Mortensen, who is the director of the Illinois Fire Services Institute, is how our decon procedures, not just for our people and our equipment and our tools into the future, is going to be impacted by these studies, but also our props. I mean, as you look at that prop, you know, you can see that the years of use on it, or perhaps, you know, months of use on it, depending on how old it is, accumulates, and the toxicity of that accumulation is going to have to be addressed at some point in the future. It would be interesting to do a wipe of the actual props and find out, you know, what's in some of these props today. I mean, you know, you always hear about the studies done where they check airline trays and they check doorknobs and they check, you know, common areas for E. coli and bacteria, and you're always astounded by what's, you know, in the normal working environment in terms of health. So it'd be interesting to see in terms of toxicity what's on the normal prop over the years and months of usage that they go through unprotected.
That's a good point. We go through a lot of effort to make those dollars go far, so you do everything you can to get as much out of these props. You'll see on the inside here where they light the fires, they've got an insert so it makes the containers last longer. We use concrete buildings for decades. So yeah, certainly you don't see many people power washing the inside of their fire props. It's a good point.
Yeah, that's going to be fascinating. And one of the other things to comment on is we're watching.
5 seconds till ignition of the rear room. 40 seconds till ignition of the rear room. Ignition team acknowledged.
So Steve was just giving direction to the ignition team. If you've been watching the video closely, you could see where one of the door gates, one of the prop windows, was actually moving with the wind. You can see the flags in the background there. That's just something you've got to deal with. I mean, these are live fire experiments. They're replicating the real world. So you know, you look at that, but that's the real fire ground. That's what these experiments are doing. They're looking at live fire and everything that has to do with it.
2, 1, ignition. Why don't you run him up quick to the trailer and let him see, go that way, see the inside.
So Keith
So
is
Chief,
taking
if you heard, we have 2 rooms of fire. We just had ignition in the first room. So they confirmed ignition in the first room, and they're going to move to the second and go ahead and ignite that.
And if you look at the containers closely, you can see this is the T style, which is probably the most common that we're seeing on drill field props these days. So here's the back side of the T, if you will. So it's
These are the back side of the 2 fire rooms you see right here.
There you go. Excellent. Okay. We're going to check your connection. Looks like we just dropped off the live feed. So, and we're
Can you
back.
still hear us, Chief?
Yep, you're back. We got you. Looking good. There's the trailer.
We're heading in. We're getting low on battery.
Okay. We're gonna go get charged up here. Again, this is live, so we've got to, you know, bear with us here, folks. We want to get you the real experience, and this is what we're doing. And that Steve and his folks are working diligently to keep this as high fidelity as we possibly can. Here's the view that Robin and the crew would have from the window. There's the exterior of the Illinois Fire Services training facility. And this is the interior prop. There's your 16 screen view. That's the backside of Robin. I have to tell you, I can't wait for Robin. We'll have Robin back at FDIC this year. Robin's going to be doing another incredible program. If you've never heard Robin speak or teach, that's amazing. Hopefully we can get Robin to say a few words when he gets a chance. He's knee-deep in gathering data right now. But clearly, in my opinion, one of the most eloquent voices for fire research today is sitting right there behind the camera.
We'll quit moving around in a second, Bobby.
Take your time, guys. We're fine. We can see the prop out there. Those are our good friends from NIOSH and those yellow vests that you see right there. They're two of our highly talented. When we spoke with those young ladies the other day, multiple degrees, just amazing people that are working for NIOSH. You can see there's a camera from the inside. You can see the thermal view there, and there you're seeing the fire in the backside of that container. That's the view that's in the second from the top there. Obviously, you can see the container exterior view, and right below it, you're actually seeing the interior tick view, if you will, of that container view. So this is what the instructors are seeing right now as they await the crew's arrival. Pretty fascinating view there.
Not sure how clear the views are, but if you can see these two camera views here, the top one is the actual burn room itself. The bottom one that you see on the screen there is the room that's adjacent to that, and you can actually see the rollover there that we've got going into the next room. Yeah,
the view is perfect. That's a beautiful, beautiful clip of the pallets burning there. And now backing off a little bit. There we go. Good view. Still excellent. Look at that rollover. Look at the ceiling of that container. That's a pretty impressive view there. We just saw an instructor's head pass. So.
Try and give you a clip of the dispatch here.
Smoke in the area, Chief. We're still under a fire. 403 Mine Canway. 403 Mine Canway. Smoke in the area still on. For you, there's a ladder truck one.
Outstanding.
403 Mine Canway for the 18th. That's received. Engine 1. Engine 1 copy. We're responding to the smoke in the area. The cast.
So now those firefighters will do a simulated dispatch. They'll take a lap, and then they'll begin their attack on the fire. There's our container.
If you can catch just out of the corner of the view there, adjacent to the building, you can see the apparatus start up.
Yep, I can see them now right in the corner.
From.
That's the engine and the ladder. And that building that you see in the background, that's where Dr. Smith is housed with all of her instrumentation and all her people. They'll be gathering the blood samples and the air samples from the firefighters, and hopefully we'll be able to get a quick view inside there before we have to let you go. But this is just amazing stuff. We're inside the live fire experiments right now. We have the pallets. Pretty amazing stuff. Look at that. There they go. Okay, so they're taking their lap just as they would in the real drill. See Dr. Smith out there with her crew. They're gonna mark out on scene. Here comes the truck company, following the water as they do. Now they have a forcible entry prop that they have to overcome. That's to simulate us gaining access to the building. All of that will be captured, and then they'll do the actual attack. Here you see the view of the exterior.
So this top left camera view here that we're trying to show you, and sorry we're stuck to the length of the power cord here, but this should give you a view of them flaking out the line on side A of the building.
It's all right. It's excellent. Very good. All of this is being closely recorded, time-stamped. Everything has to be done as closely, documented as closely as possible, so that Steve and Robin and Gavin and Kenny can measure apples to apples. So that's what you're seeing now. And they'll do one more burn today after this one. So that, what's interesting for us is that we think it's a one and done deal, but they have to break all this down, replicate it as close as possible, and then do it all over again. And just a tremendous amount of work and energy, and all this is being made possible through Fire Act grant money. So, when we talk about lobbying our senators and congressmen to keep supporting the Fire Act grant, this data and all this good work is made possible by that Fire Act grant money. So this is probably the best use of Fire Act grant money you could possibly imagine, outside of supplying equipment to needy departments. So this is really pretty spectacular stuff. You see the crews here. Looks like they're getting ready to make their entry. They're getting their SCBAs squared away and line flaked out.
Truck crew forces entry and controls the door until the engine company's ready. Both companies enter near at the same time, and then we'll switch up to the thermal imaging view to show you as they make it into the fire room to complete suppression.
Outstanding. There they go. So now this is no longer vent-limited fire. We now got a line going through the door, so we can measure that, and you can see what the fire behavior will do with a much larger air supply. You can see that smoke coming down, just like you experience when you take the front door of a residence or a business that's got a good fire condition. There's your smoke.
If you see the top left, the engine company, the attack firefighters making it into the fire room there. You can see it on the thermal imaging view.
Got it. Good view. Great view. There's your temperature gauge. It's looking like it's right around 260, 265, 194, 192. You can see in the top corner you've got a real camera view of the fire. In the center we're looking at the thermal imaging view. We can see the firefighters. Remember, there's 2 victims inside these containers that they're going to extract.
Hard to see through the smoke, but the firefighter that just entered back into the structure just came out with one of the victims.
Outstanding. Okay. Our temperature's dropping a bit. Very good.
So now we switch up to this 2 views over here. We see the thermal imaging view for the second fire room. Attack firefighter makes it through the doorway there, and it looks like he's getting ready to start flowing water.
Now we see a different temperature read at the bottom. Is that off the helmet, Keith, or do you know?
So these 2 temperature readings that you're seeing actually on here are from the thermal imaging cameras themselves. So those aren't the most reliable temperature measurements. What you're seeing there is the surface of the container, actually, not necessarily a gas temperature.
Copy. Thank you. Outstanding.
Pan back out, give you a little bit of a live view. Not too much going on this side of the structure.
No, but important. You can see our friends from NIOSH out there. That's important stuff. And you can see they've got some instrumentation out there. What's important is that these gases, depending on wind direction, we've got to be starting to look at what's the actual kill zone. Where are we in danger? Where should we be masking up? And as you saw, the firefighters, before they entered the container, we're literally kneeling outside the container. The question will be, from some of this data, is that where we should be masking up? And we may find that we may want to mask up a little bit further out, or we may find that that's absolutely acceptable.
So, Chief, try and give you a view here of the actual temperature measurements themselves. So if you can see this in here, you'll see the difference from what we saw in the thermal imaging view versus what we can see here with the data we're actually recording. You can see in the top left is one of the fire rooms, and we have temperatures in there at the ceiling level of close to 1,200 degrees Fahrenheit.
Wow.
So you can see the curve there as the temperatures have dropped back down now once they've completed suppression. But that's what it was looking like in the fire room prior to their attack.
So one of the big questions is going to be going forward, if you have an instructor who's subjected to temperatures of 1,200, 1,500 degrees, multiple iterations for a period of multiple days, what's the physiological impact of that on an instructor, and how are we going to manage that into the future? So those are good questions. You know, the mark of a great firefighter, you know, is understanding and evaluating risk, and then controlling those things that they can control as to, you know, protect the health and welfare of those that are, you know, so dedicated to getting this training out there. We see the firefighters now in the building. Looks like they're extinguishment.
They're flowing water in the first burn room, so they're completing suppression in there.
Great. Looks good.
One of the interesting pieces that you mentioned talking about exposure, we'll be comparing this round of experiments to those that were done last year using real modern furnishings compared to these as training fires.
Yeah, that is fascinating, and what I really like about it is the work that I know you and Robin and Steve are going to be doing on fidelity, and how we can construct, you know, props that will improve fidelity, and actually, you know, construct evolutions that'll help improve recognition by having greater fidelity in terms of matching up training fires with real fires. All of that we've done so far has always been anecdotal, you know.
Sorry, Bobby, we lost your audio there for a minute.
No, that's fine. I was saying, I think what's really neat about having the two sets of data is that we can now work on creating evolutions, training evolutions, and building props that help us to better recreate the fidelity of a real fire.
Absolutely. It'll be good to help dial in and see how we can get the most realistic training.
Yeah, because you know, you're going to play the way you train. So you want your props, and there we go. It looks like a second victim being pulled out.
So the truck company is completing their primary search. They've got both victims out at this time. The engine company has completed suppression, so they're venting as they go.
And the way they summarily dropped the mannequin, you could tell they were real truckies.
If you see the gentleman walking around here in the camera view with the laptop, he's actually from Skidmore College, and he is looking at a wireless readout of the heart rates of the firefighters that are inside the building.
Outstanding. And that's using the WASP technology that Globe has provided, correct?
Yes, sir.
And that's interesting technology. This is the first time that technology has been deployed in training scenarios. It was developed by Globe Manufacturing. It's called the WASP, and it enables you to look at cardiovascular responses, heart rate and such, and some temperature numbers of your actual students and instructors while they're conducting evolutions. So some folks have asked about why it's not ready for the fire ground yet, but because it's line of sight, you need to be able to control the environment more accurately. So right now it's predominantly focused on training and training academies, but what a wonderful tool to have at a training academy, especially when we're talking about the live fire training evolutions.
So what you'll start to notice now is that once they've vented as they go, we've gained visibility back in almost all of our cameras at this point.
Oh, there we are. You're right. Yep. We're up to 14. That's interesting. So that was a very good smoke condition you had.
So I believe we're getting close to having the students come back out of the building. They've completed assignments, and they're immediately going to doff their gear and head over. They're actually probably going to respond back over to the NIOSH building to start their biological sampling.
You know, we had some folks with us when we were out there on Monday from Amsterdam, and they have taken the Swedish report on decontamination procedures, and they've adopted it for the Netherlands. And we were talking about getting them out to FDIC to talk about some of that coming to the U.S. I know Joe Finn and other commissioners from around the country are looking at how to do that. And one of the things we were commenting on, Keith, during the panel, if you recall, is that some of us older firefighters were talking about the fact that we used to scrub our hose down and clean all our equipment on site, you know, in the old days, because we used to hang it was cotton jacketed and such, and we used to hang it to dry. So it's a back to the future for us.
Yeah, certainly. If you can see towards the center of the screen here, underneath the white tent, that's all the participants that have come out of the building, and they're helping them doff their gear. One of the interesting things that they're doing is they're doing some sampling of the gear as it off gases. So that's part of the urgency in getting them back to the sampling area.
You know, that's part of the other thing we were looking at too with our friends from the Netherlands and Sweden, is actually how you doff your gear and where you doff your gear. You know, again, how far does the kill zone extend and for how long? Where should rehab be set up? How should gear be removed and then decontaminated? And some of the early preliminary information we're getting back is that gross decon on scene is very effective, and that the gear does, according to our friends in the Netherlands, that the gear does stop off-gassing after about 15 minutes or so and can safely be put back into service after an hour or so without any fear of continued contamination. So some interesting data coming back is that, you know, some of our early assumptions about how dangerous the off-gassing may have been on the gear turning out to be a little less threatening, which is good. And it's nice to see that, you know, the reporting that's coming back is very measured and very accurate, and it's being built on real numbers and real stuff.
Hey, Bobby, can you hear me? It's Robin.
Yeah, we got you, Robin. Go ahead.
All right, excellent. What I want to do here is we've brought back our heat flux helmet, and I want to walk you through quick what we've built here and what we're doing with it to try and increase a little bit of the data collection that we're doing in this particular instance. So firefighters always had the question that we had sensors throughout the entire building, and the intent of the sensors was to understand the atmosphere. But a firefighter is transient. They're never in one spot in the building at any one given time. So how do we measure where they are exactly at the point that they're at? And the concept was developed at NIST and kind of perfected a little bit by the University of Illinois. Joe Willey did his master's thesis out there on it. I'm sorry, not his master's thesis, his senior project on it. He actually has a paper published if someone's interested in looking at it. But we were trying to reproduce how do we measure the environment where the firefighter is at the point in time they're in. And with that came a heat flux helmet. So this is a helmet. It's just a plastic Carnes helmet. It's got 3 sensors on it. It has a heat flux gauge at the front here. It has a heat flux gauge pointing up top, and it has a temperature sensor off to the side. This is allowing us to measure the total amount of energy received by the firefighter throughout the entire experiment. And rather than just sum all that up, we want to know when they're getting the energy and why. So we added on a data logger on the back here, which is actually going to record in real time the exposure to the firefighter. And I can open it up and show you the inside here. This is a custom data logger that we built specifically to record data on the helmet. Size was of the most importance, and weight, because we wanted the helmet distributed nicely on the head and the weight distribution. So we built a sensor that can record those 3 there, powered by a little battery pack, just like the battery pack you would recharge your phone with in the event that your battery died while you didn't have an outlet. And because heat flux requires a specific, requires water flow, we had to put a water reservoir on there. We happened to mirror our water reservoir off of a hip flask, because when we were looking for a container online, that fit really nicely to the back of the helmet and allowed us to secure and again stabilize that with the data logger, kind of offset the weight. And then we have some miniature pumps that we've purchased that run off of a 5-volt signal here, and that is pumping water through the gauge. You can see it, a few of the lines coming up here on the side, and it runs off of the same battery pack. So everything is self-contained to the helmet, and there's no wires leaving the helmet going down to the firefighter's gear or anything like that. All the data is contained there. And then we bring it back, we take it off them, and we can disconnect for the data. This is really going to give us an opportunity to understand the exact exposure the firefighter is experiencing. So not just the exposure of the environment itself, but of the firefighter as they move through the environment and do different tasks. In this particular study, we've got one of these helmets on an attack firefighter, and we have one of it on an instructor. Trying to look at the difference in the type of exposure an instructor or an attack firefighter would experience during training. In the future, we want to get this on top of a firefighter doing structural firefighting, whether it be in one of our experiments or another opportunity that we may have to again, catalog that real exposure of that particular firefighter. Hopefully being able to look at it from not just the attack firefighter, but potentially the search firefighter or any other firefighters operating on the fire ground.
Outstanding. What an amazing technology developed by one of the good folks there at NIST and ULF. So fantastic stuff. And amazingly, a firefighter would recognize the use of a flask. That's pretty common.
That is not how it works, Bobby. I'm stealing you back. So we finished the fire environment part. Now I'm going to run you through the clinical part. So I'm going to you see what happens behind the scenes on the other end.
Great job.
And Robin's never used a flask in his life. So we're going to get you over here. There's the apparatus that has returned with the crews and the instructors.
Right.
Here's our young lady from NIOSH that's picking up an area sample. She had downwind of the fire scene with some cryogenic measurements.
Right, and those are the ones that
she's bringing that.
They were measuring PHAs and VOCs and.
Yeah, PAHs and VOCs. All right, so here we're back in the firehouse, and this is where the crews come back. They drop their gear. After they drop their gear, this is where all the sample pumps are gathered. We also have
we look like we might have a little signal loss with Steve for a second, so bear with us while Steve reconnects. He probably doesn't know we've lost him for a second here. Steve, if you can hear me, Steve is on a wireless signal, ladies and gentlemen, so he's deep inside of a metal building. His signal may just be a little compromised here for a second, so hang with us. We know we're right at almost at the 12 o'clock hour, the witching hour. So, Steve, if we get
the blood draws and wipes.
Okay. When you get back into that, there we go. There we're back. We lost you for a second there, Steve, but you're back.
All right, very good. Here's the team from NIOSH continuing the blood pressure measurements as well as all the other measurements that are being collected back in an air-conditioned environment where they're rehabbing the firefighters and getting them some water.
Steve, how many volunteers did you get to participate?
We have. Let's see, what do we have? We have 6 per, so 12 students, 12 subjects times 2. So we were staggering days, and I'll see if I can get Dr. Smith out here, and she can give us a little more on what's going on with the biological measurements.
Outstanding. We got a few minutes left. We'll be coming up against, there's a live webcast. We got Doug Klein who's going to be doing a leadership class right after us, Steve. So those of us watching in a few minutes, Doug Klein will be live. So we've got a few minutes to go, and then
a few minutes to go. Dr. Smith, do you have a minute?
Got a minute for us, Denise?
She always has time for Bobby.
Hi, Denise. Bobby.
I'll turn us around here.
There they are. Hi, Denise.
Hey, Bobby, it's good to be with you again.
I missed you already, partner.
I wish you were here. It was great to have some time with you. Looking for more of it soon.
So, Denise, real quick, just give a thumbnail. What are you measuring and how's it going?
Well, we're having another great day. We've had great fires, great crews putting them out. What we're looking at is really the thermal responses. So we're measuring core temperature and the related cardiovascular strain. So we've got heart rate. We're looking at vascular measures that give us an index of the coupling of the heart and the blood and the vasculature. We're also looking at blood parameters that tell us about blood clotting potential. Of course, our friends from NIOSH are getting other metabolites as well to look at exposure risks.
Outstanding. And Dr. Smith and Director Kerber and Kenny Fent and Gavin Horn will all be doing science in the big room again for us this year. But everyone should know that Dr. Smith on Thursday will be opening up FDIC. I'll be introducing her. She'll be taking my place on Thursday morning and firing up the crowd and sharing her passion and love and intelligence and incredible dynamic personality with you all on Thursday morning at FDIC. A once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to hear Dr. Smith unplugged and share her love and vision in fire service. So thank you for doing that. And Steve, we thank you for being with us today. We know you've got so much to do and taking your time, and thank you to the Fire Services Institute. UL Laboratories is just amazing. Please go to the UL Firefighter Safety Institute. Just Google UL Firefighter Safety Institute. He's got incredible training up there that Julie has put together. Julie Zipper has put together for all of you. It's amazing stuff. It's all free. It's all online. You can go at your own pace. UL Firefighter Safety Institute is amazing. They're really leading the way in firefighters understanding, gaining more knowledge about the fire environment. Steve Kerber has just led the way in this charge. And Steve, we know you're so busy, and for you to take an hour out of your day in the middle of this experiment and do this for us is absolutely phenomenal. I don't know how to thank you again, my friend.
Well, Chief, it's our pleasure, and we want to do everything to let the fire service see the rigor that goes into taking these measurements, and that we truly do have the fire service best interest.
And we may have just lost Steve. It looks like he's kind of locked up there. Hey, this has been an amazing day, Stephen. Can you still hear me? I don't know if Steve, if you can still hear me, I'm going to sign off for us, Steve. On behalf of Underwriters Laboratory, the Illinois Fire Services Institute, Fire Engineering. Steve, you back? Kind of hear you. There, you're back, Steve. Oh,
You got me?
we got you back now, buddy.
All right. Yeah, no, just want to thank everybody. Hopefully they enjoyed the behind-the-scenes look, and we look forward to sharing a lot of this as well as a bunch of other stuff, Fire Engineering Magazine and at FDIC.
Stephen, we can't thank you enough. We love you. We'll see you real soon. I'll be seeing you. I'm going to try to make Delaware. I'm going to have to shoot over from Charlotte. I'll be in Charlotte, North Carolina the day before, but I'm going to try to shoot down there. And definitely see you at the end of August or the end of July. August.
Looking forward to it. Be smart out there, everybody.
Love you, Steve. Bye-bye. Thank you, everyone.